Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. I welcome a further opportunity to debate broadband, a very important issue for many of our areas, as we know from a recent debate in Parliament. And tonight I want to focus on the Digital Britain report, particularly, and try and explore some of the answers to the challenges we know exist, rather than dwell on the problems, because the debate Murdo Fraser had a month or two ago very adequately, I thought, rehearsed many of the problems that we face and our constituents face. Now, I start by strongly welcoming the Digital Britain report, and particularly that bit of it which relates to broadband. For the first time, it brings explicit recognition that the markets, the private markets, will not provide for large parts of the United Kingdom, particularly the areas that many of the members in this chamber tonight represent. That's particularly in the Highlands and Islands, where investment is at its highest, and yet the returns from the marketplace are at their lowest because of population dispersal and the low population numbers. So you get no return on that investment, so it's not going to happen. The other thing that the report does is it explicitly recognises the need for public investment because of markets not being able to provide. And that follows a long line of past initiatives by previous governments, Conservative, Labour, here and at the UK level, and indeed the current SNP government carrying that forward in a Scottish context. And I was pleased to see the Tories this week recognising that there is also a need for public intervention in a policy announcement in the South about that. And Digital Britain sets out also explicit minimum universal service commitments, 2 megabits for everybody in the UK by 2012. And that's quite modest by modern standards at one level, but it's still very challenging for many parts of Scotland. And it's hugely important for many people who I represent and others here do who don't have anything like that capacity at present. I also welcome the £200 million fund to help achieve that. And that further recognises, the report rather, further recognises that the next thing to look at after that 2 megabit universal commitment is the next generation access for superfast broadband. And again, the UK government have announced a £1 billion fund to move towards that. And while there might be disagreements between the Tories and the Labour Party at the UK level about how to fund that, there is nonetheless an agreement that there is a requirement for funds. Now, in the short term, it seems to me it's vital that the Scottish interest in all of this needs to be represented to Digital Britain and that unit that's looking at all of that that exists in the South. And in particular, there's a network design and procurement group which will be helping use up that £200 million. And it's vital that the Scottish Government play a role in helping represent Scotland's interests to that group. Now, it's not just a Scottish interest, but I would also argue there needs to be a regional view of this, a local picture developed across Scotland, which will help build up the national picture, identifying where are the blockages in infrastructure, what are the pinch points, where are the backhaul capacity questions that we need to resolve if we're going to move forward. And just to use one example, the Digital Britain report highlights the Western Isles as having the worst broadband connections in the UK in many respects. But also there's an issue, for example, about the connection between the Western Isles and the mainland and the backhaul capacity across the Minch. Now, that might be one of the things, but it's only one of the things, that might be required to be funded out of that £200 million. Now, I met the UK Minister a few weeks back. I arranged a meeting of various Scottish interests to talk to him about these things. He is aware of the issues. He's got some insights into those issues, and I understand the Minister will be meeting him in the next couple of weeks to talk about these things. And I believe the Scottish Government has got a very, very strong role in making a case for a very big share of that £200 million. And talk of a per capita share, I wouldn't support, because I think our needs are higher. We are further behind many parts of the United Kingdom, and we require to get a good slug, to use a technical term, of that £200 million. And in due course, we also need a good slug of that £1 billion that's coming along. Now, again, I think the Scottish Government has got a key role in developing a digital Scottish vision from current strands of policy that exist. And there are a lot of current strands of policy that are evident. A lot of people have got a lot of ideas of how to solve the problems, and those need to be pulled together in a public policy for Scotland. Now, I believe that some of the new thinking that's around would allow us, particularly, believe it or not, in the Highlands and Islands, to leapfrog the kind of 2 megabit commitment and move pretty quickly to superfast broadband. We've got some of the funding streams in place, that £200 million, that £1 billion coming along, the LEADER programme that the Government are pursuing here, wider rural development programme might be able to contribute to that as well, and achieve for Scotland far higher than the 90% coverage that the next generation broadband is envisaged to cover in the Digital Britain report. And we've already got public investment in place. Highlands and Islands and the south of Scotland got the Pathfinder investments to our schools and libraries and other public buildings paid for and with spare capacity in the system. And I would encourage some of the opening of access to that spare capacity. Highland Council would have a big role of that in it as a key player, so would Cable and Wireless, who bought over Thus, who made the original investment. And I would encourage the Minister to encourage those bodies to give some access to that. We've got communities thirsting for improvement and with a capacity for self-help. We've got technical advances. Professor Buneman in Edinburgh University doing some very interesting work with wireless technology. Well, I was also speaking to a guy in Skye, or from Skye last week, who is now putting wireless technology into campsites across the Highlands and Islands, using a point of presence locally or a local aggregation point to then deliver a signal wirelessly, with potentially very high bandwidth indeed. Now, we need to support those communities to make use of that technology to access the funds. And there are models of support available that have worked. We see the Highlands and Islands Land Unit, we've seen in the past, helping communities purchase their land. We then had the Community Renewable Unit, helping communities get involved in community renewables. Perhaps it's time now for a Community Broadband Support Unit to help communities take advantage of what's around. So we know what the challenges are, Presiding Officer. Digital Britain commits us to public
Member is just winding up.
And there are public funds available also at the Scottish level for that. We know that communities are anxious and willing to make progress. There are technical advances to leapfrog some of the current expectations. That desperately, and I stress that desperately, needs to be pulled together at the Scottish level quickly and in a coherent way to make sure we can get access to the Digital Britain funds. And I encourage the Minister to do that. Work with councils, work with Scottish Enterprise, work with HIE, work with other political parties, because there is a consensus about some of this across the parties, while there will be differences too. Work with the private interests that have got insights and interest in this as well. And it's only by limiting our own imagination and our own vision for this that we will hold ourselves back. And I believe I can see a clear way forward. I'm personally more than happy to contribute to that policy development, and I urge the Minister to act quickly on those and a range of other points to see if we can't find some very innovative and clear solutions to take us forward faster than perhaps anybody believes we can currently. Thank you very much, President.